Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for being here today. I'm delighted to be chatting with you. I've been a lifelong life observer. It probably started because I was the youngest of 5 children, and there was an 18-year gap between my oldest brother and me. So as the youngest, always looking up the ladder, you sort of observe life. And that's continued today. I was a corporate consultant for about 25 years, and now I run my own registered investment advisory service. And the value of that is it turned out to be an excellent platform to observe people. And I love that part of it. I'm naturally curious and I like people. So this has been something that has been an added bonus. When I started as a financial planner, a personal financial planner, I thought it was all about dollars and cents and efficient market theory and things like that. And it turned out that it is sort of. But actually, personal financial planning is much more about the person than the finance. And so today I wanted to share with you some of the life lessons that I've observed from working with our clients collaboratively. As a fee-only advisor, it turns out to be a really good place to watch what people do and what they say. And as our players just showed you, sometimes the two don't match. So I wanted to warn you about 2 things. One, I was a teacher at one time, and so I look on every presentation as an opportunity to teach. So I will stop at several points and ask you to think about what it is that I've said and maybe make some notes, so be aware of that. And the second, I love whiteboards. When I'm working on a presentation or an article, I use whiteboards. And this is an example of what one of my typical whiteboards would look like. But whiteboards don't translate very well into presentations, and they're hard to see. However, I decided to try something a little bit different today, and I created a series of PowerPoint presentation using a series of whiteboards. So you'll see my hand drawing up here as we go along. All right, first life lesson. People get confused about wants and needs. This should be no surprise to you. Let me give you an example of a client we have where this really came home. We were working with this retired couple, or excuse me, they were about to retire in a year, and we crunched the numbers and said to the clients, you're going to be able to live comfortably on $20,000 a month after taxes. At which point, the wife promptly burst into tears. And I said, I don't understand. And she said, well, we live on $30,000 a month right now, and this is going to be a hardship. And then she wailed, we don't live a lavish lifestyle. And that was a sort of a code word that I've learned in my business that says we don't know the difference between needs and wants. We don't know the difference between needs and wants. And I'm sure that you can think of other examples in your life as well, but I'm not going to ask you to do that just yet. One of the things that I would say to you is that people get confused about needs and wants when they're thinking about happiness. And why is that? Well, one of them is because they're keeping up with the Joneses. Now, this may sound trite, but it comes up in a variety of ways, and I want you to think about it. We have a client, and they live here in Bellevue, and they're going on a Whistler ski trip this month, in fact, when they have not saved enough for their daughter's college education, and they've said that that's important to them. But it's because they're trying to keep up with the Joneses. They have some sense that if they go on this Whistler ski trip, they'll be happier. And that isn't really the case in point. And there's some subtle things that go into that. They have kids, the kids go to school, everybody talks about it, it's keeping up with the Joneses. The second thing that happens is we get this more is better syndrome. More is better. And it shows up like this. People tend to think that if I just make more money, I'm going to be happier. I'm going to be happier. And then they use that to buy things, and in fact, it doesn't work that way. A fair amount of academic research shows that more is not better when it comes to income. A colleague of mine, John Nelson at the University of Wisconsin, has done extensive work on this, working with retirees. And they have found that after about $75,000 of income, happiness does not go up equal to the amount of income. So this is one of the things that I would say to you is think a little bit about this whole business of what is happiness and wants and needs. And if I may, I will share with you the model that I've seen for happiness working with our clients, both living and dying. And the model looks something like this, which is the intersection of memorable experiences and the people that we love actually leads to happiness. It isn't all the things that we can acquire in life. It's much more like this. So I leave this with you to think about. What is your formula for happiness? And how do wants and needs fit into that? And then I'm going to give you a challenge. So for those of you that were paying attention, here's your first homework assignment. I want you to think about, or I want you to try to see how long you can go without spending anything that isn't needed. So no dining out, no buying clothes, no ski trips to Whistler, and see how long you can go. I suggest to our clients when they do this a couple of things to be aware. One is it's going to bring up some stuff because we get sort of insulated from what's really important to us. So I want you to be aware of that. And what we tell our clients is that if you can work your way through that, you may be on the road to some self-discovery that's important to you. And one of the things we tell our clients is we're not so much concerned about how you compare to others. We're mostly concerned about how you compare to your earlier self. That's the first one. Second lesson, and this has got this catchy series of letters. I can't pronounce it. I guess it's an acronym. But it stands for there's no such thing as a free lunch. TNSTFL, no such thing as a free lunch. And it's all around us. Now, financial advisors love this one because, sorry, I hit the wrong one. This is the basic graph that we use when we're talking with our clients. And on the left-hand side is return, and across the bottom is risk. And every client I've ever talked to, in fact, most advisors that I've talked to, would like to be up there in the left-hand corner. But in fact, a guy by the name of Harry Markowitz won the Nobel Prize in 1960 when he said that this is not possible. That in fact, we all have to be below that line somewhere. So Never Never Land is up there in the upper left-hand corner. But in fact, you have to be down below. Now, why is this important? Because from an investment standpoint, it's very clear. Everybody wants high returns and low risk. High returns and low risk. But we do the same thing in life when you think about it. Everybody wants to eat what they want, go to the best Super Bowl party, eat all the worst junk they can find, and still maintain their girlish figure or boyish figure, right? We want to have the biggest house. Some people want to have the biggest house with a big mortgage and still save for retirement. And finally, one of the things that I like to tell people is in relationships, right? For the men, they want the ideal woman, and for the women, they want the ideal man, and they don't want to work at a relationship. But there is no such thing as a free lunch. Let me suggest to you, finally, when we talk to our clients, we put it very, very boldly to them. We say, look, the two choices are fear and greed when it comes to your money. Choose one and choose wisely. Choose one and choose wisely. Because you can't have them both ways. There is no such thing as a free lunch. So the second homework assignment, and you can tell I was a teacher because I never forget the homework assignments. I want you to spend the next week or so and just sort of tune in to the deals that you make with yourself about the free lunches that you're hoping to get. You know, it might be, I'm going to speed just this one time. Or it might be, I'm going to eat this cake even though I know that I shouldn't. And tune into that. And my request to you is if you run across something that's very interesting to you, please send me an email. I love to gather these up about the free lunches that we're trying to get from people. So the third life lesson is that we are our own worst enemy. And you heard the Business Theater Live players do a version of this. And this manifests itself in 4 ways, and I'm going to explain this to you. So imagine you didn't get lunch today. It's, 1:45, and you didn't get lunch. And I said to you, you have a choice between this Hershey bar or this orange. Which would you like? Thank you. Now, imagine it's a week from now, and you miss lunch on Tuesday again, and I say to you, okay, what do you imagine you will choose, the orange or the Hershey bar? The research is very clear on this. The majority of people say, I'll take the Hershey bar now, but in a week I'm going to take the orange. And that is delusional and totally false. You can't have it both ways. When presented with an immediate gratification, most people choose the Hershey bar. So that's the first mistake people make when they're thinking about their finances and about life in general, in fact. They're looking for instant gratification, which, again, the players showed you an example of that. When confronted with the question of the really cool shoes or the more practical running shoes or walking shoes, she chose the really cute shoes. Thank you. So there's a couple more opportunities that I want to tell you about when it comes to making decisions, and this is where we make mistakes all the time. We have faulty decision-making processes. So again, this is called the behavior gap. And the graph on the left is what an investment ought to return from a pure sense. So think of the S&P 500 index, something you've all heard about, or the Dow Jones index, right? That's what the return is. But research shows that the investors actually get less, as much as 5% less than what it is that they should get if they were just investing purely. And the difference between the two is what's called the behavior gap. A guy by the name of Carl Richards has written a book about this, and he points this out in great detail. People make mistakes in 3 ways when they're making decisions, and it creates a behavior gap. And let me see if I can illustrate that for you. The first one is overconfidence. Now, I'm going to pick on doctors for just a moment, but for a good reason. Doctors make life decisions all the time, and they're really good at it, or they don't stay in business, right? They become overconfident in their ability to make decisions. And we are the same way. If you are a really astute business person or you're a senior executive, you get very confident in your ability. But in fact, the more overconfidence, the more mistakes, the higher the cost of mistakes. Let me give you one quick example of that. A good friend of mine invested in Washington Mutual. You all remember Washington Mutual, right? WAMU, right? So he was convinced it was going to be a great investment, and he invested at 50, and then it went up to 80, and he loved it at 80. When it came back down to 70, he bought more. And when it came to 60, he bought more because he was absolutely convinced. He was overconfident. And then he wrote it all the way back down to 20 and finally sold out. So there's an example of a decision-making mistake where he was overconfident. And perhaps you can think of some of those situations on your own as well. But overconfidence is the first decision-making mistake that people make, and I see it all the time. Because people are successful in one aspect of their life, they think that they're going to be an expert in another area. And it leads to people developing, lotto picking systems or a way to beat the roulette wheel or whatever it is. But we get this overconfidence. Now, the second one is this tendency for us to think that a more complex solution is better. And this is what we believe, but in fact, that's wrong. That in fact, better decisions are made with things that are more simple. And here's my next prop for this. This is an iPod. And when Steve Jobs and the engineers at Apple were designing this music player, they cut to the essence of what this thing is. It's a music player. And they got rid of everything else that got in the way of it. And do you all remember the original iPod? It had that really cool wheel on it, for example. That was patented, by the way, by engineers there. But they got to the essence of it and they cut away. So here's an example in our lifetime about adding complexity. The tendency is for us to think that a complex answer is a better one, but let me give you a very simple example. All of us, I presume, are going to want to retire at some time, right? In fact, retirement is not about money. It's about happiness. And we confuse retirement by thinking it's all about money. It's about happiness. And the three key questions in retirement are, where do you live? What do you do? Who do you do it with? Answer those three, and the money is irrelevant. Let me pick on life insurance as another one. Life insurance is essentially an income replacement for premature death, right? That's what it does. But the life insurance industry, and I hope I'm not offending anybody, has found many ways to make this much more complex. There are universal variable life policies, there are indexed annuities, there's all these other kinds of items that are complex answers to really a simple problem, which is how do you replace the income when somebody dies early? I'll give you an example of something here that I think you'll find of interest, and I'll move back here into the middle a little bit. One of the things that we find from our clients is that sometimes they don't trust us because we believe in simplicity. So we had a client that came to us, and they, again, were going to retire in about a year. And he gave us a list of his securities, and he had 65 securities in his portfolio. Now, we know that you can create an efficient and effective portfolio using something like the coffeehouse investor approach, where you only need maybe 6 or 8 securities in total. But this client simply would not believe it. He absolutely wanted to see something that had, alternative investments and hedge funds and options and all that kind of stuff, and we couldn't dissuade him. So finally, we decided that we couldn't work with him because he was looking for a complex answer to a simple problem. And in this case, he was missing the essence of what we were trying to do. Does that make sense? So the last example of a mistake that people typically make when they are making a decision about money things, but it happens in life, is this emotional attachment to a decision. And the more emotionally attached you are to a decision, the more likely it is to be a mistake. Give you an example. We have a client who has a house that it is worth on the market less than what they paid for it. We cannot get them to sell that house no matter what. They've sat on it now. They are in the 3rd year of sitting on trying to sell this house. They are so emotionally attached to the decision to buy the house that they can't sell the bloody thing and they can't move on. So this is what we call the error of taking a position instead of keeping in mind what their interest is. So a position versus an interest. So the position is, we got to sell this house for more than we paid for it. But their interest is to be able to move to a better house because they're bursting at the seams with the one that they have. So I ask you to think about the difference between a position and an interest. And in our terms, the more you hang on to a decision because it's a position, I have to go to this restaurant, our kids have to go to this Ivy League school, we have to do this, it's usually an emotional attachment to a position instead of thinking about what the interest is. So that's the third mistake that people typically make when they are making decisions about finance and life in general. So this is my third challenge to you. Think about this week as you're going along and listen, not to you, but to other people, and listen to the positions people take and wonder what their underlying interest is. And many times the position and the interest are in conflict with one another. So here we go. Here's the summary. These are the 3 life lessons that I've learned by being a financial advisor, by observing my clients and the people around us. First, there is this confusion about wants and needs. Second, there is this tendency to believe that there's a free lunch when in fact there isn't. And third, we are our own worst enemy in one of 4 ways, and probably all 4. Immediate gratification, overconfidence in decisions, looking for a complex answer instead of looking for the essence of it, which is a simple answer, and finally being emotionally attached to a position. I'll leave you with this one final thought, if I may. Have you ever thought about what money is? I mean, what's money, right? The economists will give you an answer, but we think of it a little bit of a different way. We think of money as energy, and you earn this energy by the work you do. And then you exchange that energy for something that you want or need, or a service, or for security, or for a roof over your head. And our job as financial advisors is to help people focus their energy on the things that are important to them so they don't waste their energy on things that are not important to them. So this week as you go along, think of money as energy and think of where you're focusing your energy as you go along. Thank you.